The more our presence of awareness is there, the less the ego is going to talk. The less presence of awareness is there, the stronger the meetings the ego is going to have. Right? Yeah. Yeah.
Rinpoche, I've been kind of lucky in that most of my fears have been mild enough that I can work with them. But I had an experience a couple of years ago of just absolute terror, and at that point, because there was so much terror, it was not possible to sit and watch and gently breathe, and your heart's pounding, and just in a moment of panic like that, what would be a useful thing for someone to do?
Well, I think probably first, as you're saying, you are lucky enough that the fear is mild, that you are able to do your practices. So if you recognize you're lucky, if you recognize your fear is not very strong, that you're able to do practices. So if you keep on doing repeatedly, very frequently, like as an exercise. So more you frequently do that, the more you're familiar with by doing it, and that is what is going to help you when you have a very severe one, because it's just kind of habit. It's like something you know what to do, and it might be not very easy to do, but maybe it's easier than you think, because it's just a question about having enough trust, familiarity, and experience. And if this is what frequently if you do, like for example when we do the 9 breathing exercise, okay, what it means to kind of minimizing your anger, attachment, your doubts. Either they're active one, passive one, or they're even very seed level. And it's quite amazing. Anytime when you do it, when we do usually, we always do the beginning of the meditation. Then you can say, well, you're doing meditation, why you have to do 9 breathing? You're already doing nice things. You don't have to do 9 breathing. But that's not true. When you do the 9 breathing, if you do it, then afterward you do a half an hour nice sitting, the quality of sitting is so beautiful, so different. So we do it because even there is subtle things there, it will just kind of clears the air. We don't do it practices just because there's a big problem. So I think so basically what I'm saying here is that becoming more familiar, just repeating more frequently, getting used to it more, then I think it will come. It's like again the same thing like a vow. So it seems sometimes for people, knowing practice and also remembering when to do. And it's interesting. As a teacher, one of the frequently people ask me a question is that people will say, I have been having these problems. What practice I should do? After I explain long few hours of explanation what you should do when you have a problem, and somebody asks, I have this problem in my life, what I should do. What does that exactly means? I know when you talk about theory, you can do this, you can do that, but in this case, I really have a problem. And what I should do. And this is what you're supposed to do, This is exactly what I'm talking about. So I'm talking to you. And I'm talking with that problem. That's what you're supposed to do. And everybody feels like, like challenges when you have personal challenges you face, of course it's very strong, very vivid, very hard. But that is the place where you wanted to bring it. Not always will be easy, but if you trust it, I don't have my own experience with those things. You of course, when you have your trust to practice, you have experience of the practice, the ego is still trying to talk to you. But your voice is much stronger. And gradually, It's like having one noisy person in a nice group of many nice people. So that if the group is strong, the noisy person will gradually less and less and less and disappear. But the group is weak, the noisy person will take it over. It's a similar thing. Yeah.
I was just going to say, it sounds to me, Rinpoche, like you're talking about your practice becoming your refuge.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Your practice is your refuge, because if you have the practice, if you have a trust to it, so no matter where you are, it's there with you. You see, your problem is able to travel with you, and your practice should be able to travel with you, right? Together, one next to each other, Yeah.
Rinpoche, when you were talking about the effect on the group, it made me think about if you're with someone else who's really afraid, and you want to have some way to help them, doing the practice for myself, might that help them? Or would it be better to suggest some breathing to them, or what?
Well, I think it depends on your relation to that person. Sometime we give fear to each other. I can give my fear completely to somebody else, and then I'm good at pretending to not be afraid. So I can say, oh, no problem. For you're afraid, right? I'm sure you're afraid. You can say, how are you? I remember one friend. I always remind me this guy. He mean good, but the way he asks the question, how are you? It's just basically that deep voice coming from some dark place, and there's no other answer. I'm not well. Then in case you wanted to challenge that situation, you said, I'm fine. Are you sure? You see, so sometimes we can be very affecting each other. If you're close to somebody, then if you really know the fear is very much part of both of you, then for sure, you kind of work together. But if somebody completely there's nothing really much to do with you, then of course you can dedicate, and prayer for somebody might help, but somebody need to do their own work. Okay, maybe one last question if there's anybody.
Well, we've been having a backing and forthing here on the internet. Somebody asked a question. See if I can find it again. What is the antidote of fear, or the opposite quality? And we had lots of answers here, like equanimity, love, all sorts of things. Someone said, look inward and ask who is afraid, and then the fear of one who's looking, both will dissolve. Then you trust the space that opens up inside you.
Okay. You see, now they're all there, seems like talking to each other, you see.
Wow, look at all the baby egos.
Okay, yeah, exactly. That's okay. I'm used to have that experiences, you see. So, yeah.
It says, Rinpoche, in Christianity there is a verse, the Lord helps he who helps himself. In other words, the ego seems to have its place. Can you comment on when and how it's useful?
Well, for example, thoughts are very useful. Like if you use it well, this is what we're able to analyze things. This is what we're able to recognize something. In our world, if there is no thought, it will be very difficult to function. But the amount of thoughts we need, we don't need as much as we think we need. So if you sometimes I'm surprised, I have no thought and you're driving 1 hour, like amazing, like you're driving 60 miles an hour, 70 miles an hour, and with no thought, you're not having accidents.